gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Monday Wormsign for today, November 1st, 2021. I am your host, Tristan. I run the YouTube channel Step Back, which you're probably watching this on right now, if not interesting. I'm also the co-host of the hit podcast, now in the number 129 or something like that in top history podcasts. It's probably not aliens. And yeah, I stream on Mondays and Tuesdays. Mondays I do this show from 12 till 2 with Mia Mulder, who will be joining us in just a moment. And on Tuesday night, I do Step Back Tonight, which goes from 7 until 9. All this is Eastern time, whatever time it is in Ontario, basically. I go by he, him pronouns. You can find my work at Patreon. You can find my work at stepbackhistory.com. But if you want to support my work, you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory and see videos early for as little as 84 cents a month, or vote on new video topics for as little as $4.20 a month. So good stuff if you want to help out. If you have Amazon Prime, you can support this channel for free by using your monthly Twitch Prime subscription and giving it to Step Back, because I get a little bit of a kickback, and it is just baked into your Amazon Prime membership. So you don't have to pay anything. It just comes right out of money that Amazon was just going to keep anyway. And of course, if you've got some coins jingling in your pocket, anything like, super chats, bits, Twitch subscriptions are all welcome. They're all appreciated. As far as content, my latest video is called Are We on the Brink of Mass Starvation? It's a video about overpopulation. Very fun. I'm sure people seem to be, some people seem to be enjoying it. It's, doing very average. And my next video, which I should be starting work on tomorrow, will be about cybersyn, which will be really fun. If you have questions for future streams, we got a whole lot of questions to get through today. But if you got questions for future streams, I'm going to put a link in the chat to the link where you can submit questions, and we'll get to them. We hang on to these for a month, so if we don't get to your question today, just check on in future streams, and you might hear it. And of course, new folks, if this is your first time watching Step Back, please make yourself known in the chat. We have a very nice and welcoming chat community that is always happy to meet some new people. And I'm always happy to see new people showing up and saying hello. All right. That's a sort of basic opening run through. So yeah, let's get Mia in here. Let's do this. Oh, man. Yeah, I remembered 1 minute before this started, the whole daylight savings thing with Europe, so had to check in at 11:59.
Oh, God.
Hello.
Okay, we're good. Fine. God, every single time, I'm not really sure if we're live or not, but everything's fine. Hello.
Hello. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm doing great. I've been battling a cold back and forth and have stress with the video, stress. It's been non-stop action for the last a month.
Nice.
For me. We finished a video, Team C's did a thing, I had a charity thing.
Yeah.
I'm finally, at long last, alive enough to join the stream, even if I do sound like I'm the Crypt Keeper.
Well, I'm glad to have you. Yeah, it's been a few weeks. You've been sick. You've been all sorts of stuff. So you've been moving. There was a missing desk.
It's always something. But now finally everything's fine.
Yeah, you made it.
Everything's okay. Yeah, everything's all good. I'm so happy about it. And now we can finally talk about Worm.
Yes, finally, after a month or two after it came out in Europe, the Worm movie finally came out in North America.
Yeah, and I have rewatched it.
I
For the purposes of this stream, I have
oh
watched
my,
it again.
doing your homework. I also rewatched it like the day after I saw it because I needed to miss the section of the movie I missed by going to the bathroom, as you do, and
Hmm.
um, and also to just
I had the exact same thing. What scene was it? I have to know.
it was the scene where Liet Kynes is describing the still suits to everybody,
Mm.
which, like, as someone who knows what a still suit is, I'm like, okay, cool, cool, cool. But apparently it's like, as I watch it, I'm like, oh, this is obscenely like accurate to the books. Like
Yeah.
that scene was like lifted line for line out of the books, and I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool.
Yeah, and it's good to see. It's interesting to see what they kept. My scene was the with the one where they showed the scene of the Sardaukar on their planets.
Oh
So
my
there's a
god, the
certain.
Sardaukar thing was like the most badass scene in the movie.
I know, and I missed it, and I hate it. But that's also why I rewatched it so I could catch it.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So we do have questions to get to today, but we need to get Dune talk done. I think
We've been
that's
hyping
important.
up Dune Talk. Yeah, we've been hyping up Dune Talk for the last year. We need to talk about Dune.
It's true because it got canceled for a year.
Yeah, like I remember us being very excited to see it, and then hearing about the postponation and being just heartbroken.
Yeah. So I guess we should probably like start with like our impressions of this movie. Um,
Yes.
which like I don't
There
know.
will
Like,
be spoilers, by the way, dear
yeah, yeah,
viewers,
yeah.
I
If you
think.
haven't seen the movie Dune or the multiple film adaptations that have been coming out since before I was born, or the book that came out when my dad was under 10 years old, then yeah, you might get spoiled.
Yeah.
But
So how did you get it? Like, what's your initial impression? Did you like the movie?
I'm embarrassed how much I liked it. Because like I had a friend who I saw it with who isn't really into Dune, and the thing is like people who are really into Dune have a very specific feeling about Dune media in general, including the books, which is like
Yeah.
you can read a book and then be like, I was confused the whole time. I did not like the characters. Everything was flat. I didn't understand what was going on. It was the best book I ever read. And the movie, I absolutely so like the thing about Dune is that like as a book, it is famously hard to make a movie out of because
Yeah.
you have to throw so much world at the audience in such a short amount of time for the story to get ready. So this one, so they've done it a couple times. So the 1985 movie tried to tell like a 2.5 hour movie. Apparently, they used to give away like they gave away like a glossary to people when they walked into the movie to tell you what all the things were.
Well, that's what Frank did. So I mean,
Yeah,
if it worked for the book, why not?
yeah. And then the second one was was a
The
Sci-Fi Channel
sci-fi miniseries.
miniseries, which at least had like a lot more time to do stuff. But I don't know. I feel like it was very low budget and the actors were kind of bad. Um,
But
but
it's still seen as like a better adaptation of the actual material.
yes, it loses a lot. Like the David Lynch movie has a lot of camp potential.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's the time when what's it called? Like the personal shields being turning you into a Minecraft character. Um, just there's a lot going on with that movie. But I will
Yeah.
say that Denis Villeneuve, who I think might be one of my favorite directors now, really, really got the source material and understood science fiction in a way that I think I should have guessed with Arrival because I really liked Arrival. That I'm like, okay, okay, I can do
Yeah.
this, I can do this. And then on top of that, I actually was pretty impressed with how he was able to piecemeal the world out to everybody and make everything look distinct and interesting without like. Because the thing about Dune, if you guys haven't read the book, is that Dune is a book that literally has a glossary and appendix because it doesn't introduce anything. There's no easing you into it. They start by referencing organizations and companies and places that have no description whatsoever. And so you spend
they do give a very like short explanation, but they give like an in-universe explanation. They give it like to Paul,
yeah,
who already knows a significant amount, which you don't. So like you talk about the Choem company profits, and it's just like what?
Yeah, and so in the movie,
What do they do? I
yeah.
still don't really understand what they do.
Chom isn't Chom the Spacing Guild? It's basically the syndicate that controls the navigators.
Yeah, but like that's not super clear in the book. But I think that like that's something that Paul knows.
Yeah.
Right, like Paul gets that. So when they talk about the minute details of the company, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But I need to understand the whole picture.
Yeah, and I mean the movie does a lot of good things. Like, for example, doesn't reference the Orange Catholic Bible or Orange Catholic Church at all, because that's just a thing that's thrown in to characterize Dr. Yui. That is instantly thrown out because it's just a thing that Frank Herbert thought was cool.
Yeah, I mean, I did find it very interesting, like what they chose to keep and what they didn't choose to keep.
Mm-hmm.
Either because it doesn't work or because it doesn't like contribute to the point of Dune, which is something that I feel must have been the most difficult thing for Villeneuve to sort of like piece together, because it has like 18 different themes that don't all necessarily like merge very perfectly well, right? I think it works great in like as a complete picture, but once you take out like a few things, then you have to like take away different things. So, like, what is Dune like about?
Yeah.
And I think that he did a very good job about that. Like, there was a part of me that's like a little sad that the dinner scene wasn't in when like the family like meet with various like notable people in the city, and they kind of realize just how fucked they are.
Yeah.
And because I think that like that introduces, I think that that's a nice midpoint between them coming to the planet being like, okay, we're under threat and we're gonna do something here, but we're gonna be fine, to oh shit, we might not actually be fine.
Yeah.
And before they are like, we're completely fucked.
Yeah, the movie makes them they're just kind of less naive from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think that works. That works great.
Yeah, because I honestly like there's some things I think that the Villeneuve movie did that the book did not do as well. Like I think that the movie did, I mean, I think it might just be Oscar Isaac. The movie did more work to make Leto a likable character who seems competent at his job, which the books didn't do. The books kind of portray Leto as a kind of wise person about a few things, but basically just dumbly walks into his own oblivion.
Yeah. Like he's a bit too naive for his own good. He's a bit too trusting in a bit. And I think that, they did a great job to do that too. And also like someone mentioned, they didn't include the suspicion of Jessica as like the traitor. They just sort of like just cut that part out. That's actually, and that brings me to something that I think could have been maybe my only like actual criticism of the thing. The betrayal of Dr. Yue, I think, could have been a little bit better set up.
Telegraphed a bit.
Tiny bit. But it works. Like it all works fine.
Yeah.
It just like I just think that like from someone who I'm just imagining someone who doesn't know the book, that they might be a bit like not shocked in a way that's like not constructive, and shocked in a way that's just like, oh shit, wait, why? Like it like would really, yeah. But it works as it is, and I might just be, and as I said, like it's such minor nitpicks of what is overall else like a great narrative of like the point of Dune.
I also want to mention while we were here that thank you Yoshimoshi for for subscribing with Amazon Prime, and thank you for Alex Shendy for also 11 months of subscriptions. So holy moly, thank you.
Oh yeah.
That all like the problem is that part of the book is very slow and very convoluted, where there's too much happening at the same time, because it's supposed to, I think, make you feel just as overwhelmed as Paul is, with like too much politics happening in such a short amount of time and not really being 100% clued into everything that's going on. But they wanted to fast track that because obviously they want to have a plot, because I think that they got a lot more, is that a movie can't really, like, a lot of times, a lot of like the other adaptations tried to just straight up adapt that part of the movie, but the thing is, that's a part of the story that works better as a novel, where you're spending a lot more time slowly understanding Arrakeen and understanding all the characters, which is not really a thing you can afford to do in cinema. This is why I always thought that if there was going to be a Dune like film adaptation, that I would have preferred something like a prestige TV show than like a movie. But I'm obviously not in control of these things, so. But I did. Oh, sorry.
I want someone to adapt. No, yeah, I agree. Like, I want someone to adapt Dune, like The Expanse.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Because I think that would have gotten a lot more. And also, one of the best things about Dune is its world building. So, even having some extra time to explore different things that don't necessarily even get into the book would be great.
Yeah.
There's some things that I like too that are subtle that I like a lot. Like, one, they don't really describe what mentats are, but you can tell which one they are because they have visual signifiers, and you can guess pretty quickly what they do by how they talk and what they do. I thought that was really good. Then there was another thing that I was really a big fan of. I really liked the use of visual language in a lot of things in this. Like, understanding intuitively how things like that are really confusing in the book, like how shields work, is much more understandable with that sort of like color-coded movement and stuff.
Yeah.
And the other thing, they don't telegraph this, they don't pay attention to this, but they just subtly create a world where there's no computers, and they don't mention it or anything like that. And so like you wouldn't pick it up unless you knew the books, but like it works. Like, you don't learn anything about any Butlerian jihad because it has nothing to do with the story. But it
just works.
Yeah. And that's
the way they set it up early, very early too, like the idea of the mentat, right? Like with the
when Thufir calculates in like a second the cost of that trip, that's all you need.
That's all you need. You get it. Like, some people can do that.
Yeah, and he does the little eye thing, and all of the mentats have that lip tattoo, and I'm like, yeah, it's perfect. It's just enough to visually signify, oh, that guy in the Harkonnen thing, that's the same as this guy for this guy.
Yeah,
like that's all you need. And like because there's one thing I really like about Denis Villeneuve's style, is that he's really good at visual language. He's really good at making things look big and have a really good sense of scale. And I think that was the best part of this. And
for sure.
And it put its stake in the ground, and it's like, these are the things we're going to explore. These are the things we're not going to explore. Some people were disappointed that Chani had basically no role in this.
But that's also like, I don't really know what people expected, because like people knew that the movie was going to end there, right? Like, she doesn't show up until then.
Yeah, but also that she is first set up as a series of just visions that Paul has. So
yeah,
that was solid. I thought that worked. Like, I thought like the fact is that they spent the whole movie setting her up so that the next movie kind of explores it. So, and the voice, yes. Oh, I forgot about this. This is the first impression I thought was amazing. The soundtrack and sound design of the movie are probably the strongest parts of the movie. The music is absolutely like perfect for the tone of the film. And how everything sounded was so good. Like, I got to see it in theaters, and I really recommend you do, because like things like the voice and other things were just like so perfect. I was like, oh my god, okay.
the voice specifically I thought worked so good because like I wasn't because they introduced a thing when they sit at the table on Caladan, and they just like train a little bit, and it doesn't sound like it sounds a little goofy sort of like in my impression, and you're like okay. All right. Well, how is that gonna go? But the payoff is so good in the ornithopter scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like when when Jessica uses it, like
Yeah.
not only like properly but like intensely with like good purpose and like as she does, and then it just then the terrifyingness of that of the voice really works.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Also, the ornithopters were really good design as well. I thought that they
yeah,
were like so good. Like it's not quite a dragonfly, and it's not quite a helicopter, but man,
some wacky shit. I'd love that everyone has tried to come up an interesting way to design the ornithopters, and it's always something a little bit different.
yeah. Like I remember the ornithopters in the sci-fi miniseries were literally just like they just had like two folding things like this that had fans on them or something like that.
Yeah, it's very it's fun. It's good stuff.
And like
And like
even
as you say, all the technology like really it really fits the sort of like Dune vibe where it's not supposed to be like it's not to be like Star Trekky for lack of a better term. Like it's supposed to give this sort of like more feudal vibe, and I think that that works really well.
yeah, and also I like there's sort of a lot of maybe this is just my reading into it, but there's a lot of like imagery of the technology in the desert that definitely like seems inspired by like images from like Desert Storm and the Iraq War and stuff like that, where like you can see like these heavy duty machines that are taking heavy damage from like exposure to the sand and stuff like that. And I was like, oh yeah, like the whole thing about like the like basically the military being in the desert is a whole rough thing. Like
Yeah.
and how
And I'm very happy about that too. Like that Villeneuve is like really leaning in to this to the like sort of the ideas that Frank presents in the book, right? Like the themes of like military occupation and oil.
yeah, and
Uh,
because I mean, Dune, if you guys want, Dune's like overall theme because it's like one of the first books to really one of the first science fiction novels to talk about resources and ecology as like major themes. And here's the if you're doing an eighth grade book report on Dune, here's the secret thesis of the book, which is that this society is completely fucked up because they're hopelessly dependent on a single resource that comes from one place. And not only is it make their entire society horrific and warped towards that one thing, but it also is brutal. It leads to brutal
yeah.
violence being done towards the indigenous people who live there.
Yeah,
And
and the only way to sustain the entire system is to be like ruthlessly authoritarian. Even the good guys have to be ruthlessly authoritarian in order to like keep the system running.
and not to do too many spoiler alert, but the only way to fix it is to break the entire system. um, but we're getting into the wormiest of the books at that point. We're getting into big man worm at that point.
They need to make that movie. They need to make it.
As far as
I
I
want
can, yeah, as far as I can tell, it sounds like Denis Villeneuve's highest ambition is to get Dune Messiah, which that would be if he could do Dune and Dune Messiah, that would be like that would work because
yeah.
that follows once if you could do children as well, that would be really fun. But you could, if you really wanted to, cover like the first two, like the first book, the first two books, and the first three books. You could do those as a set of movies and then be done, and it would be satisfying.
Yeah.
If you go past that, things are gonna get weird. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Matt Lipton, thank you for the $10 super chat. Hey, Mia, I tried mentioning this last week, but recently a bunch of activists and high schoolers came together in Ottawa to chase off transphobes who've been protesting in front of our local schools.
Based.
Based as hell, yeah.
I do love high schoolers doing activism like this because whenever adults do any type of activism like this, it always gets portrayed as like bad and violent and scary. But when high schoolers do it, because they're high schoolers, it gives it a certain air of like you can't prescribe sort of like danger to high schoolers in the same way, which means that it hits better when they chase people off, because then they're just chasing people off and we can enjoy it for what it is.
Yes.
And transphobes can't be like, the high schoolers are destroying our society and oppressing everyone, because they sort of have this sort of like protection of being children. So fuck yes, keep doing that. I love it.
High schoolers also have highly sharpened bullying skills, which I think makes them better at it as well.
Yeah, high schoolers are extraordinarily powerful when it comes to this.
Yes.
If they use their power if they use their powers for good, society would be very different. This is the real point of Dune.
This is why our world basically fell apart when we decided to focus on anti-bullying campaigns, because the problem was the target, not the effort itself.
Yeah, we bullying is fine. You just gotta bully the right people.
Yeah, we went on an anti-bullying campaign, and now we've made a generation of Silicon Valley psychopaths. Like we made a mistake.
Oh God, lovely.
Yeah. On back to like worm talk. Also worm. How did you feel about? At first, I was kind of against it, but then I liked it more. The fact that the worms have like kind of like a baleen type of look in their mouths, like more like
more
like a worm, they don't have
yeah.
like those the other ones. They had like mouths with teeth and stuff like that, which looked really silly in the '80s movie. But they kind of had this flower design in the
like
miniseries.
This thing,
Yeah, but this one it looked a lot more like a leech or something like that.
I don't mind it at all. I think it works. I think it really works. The sort of like because the worms in the book, like their diet is mostly sand, right? So it works really well for them to sort of like be like wormy, be a little sifty, be a little weird like that, like whales. And I think it works also for the sort of like the awesome, because they're really supposed to have like this awesome, intimidating Leviathan feel to them. But they're also not supposed to be like malevolent. Like they're just worms. They're just worms. Like they'll fuck you up and they'll eat you, but that's what they do. They're worms.
Yeah, the like making of like a mouth with sharp teeth thing for the other adaptations was very much to make them look like a monster. And like the fact that like they just look like filter feeders in the sand, and the only reason why they hunt you is because they're so big in your food. Like I liked how like they're portrayed as evil, but looking at them you can tell they're just animals, and it makes them also look more alien, which I think also like this like alternate biosphere thing really worked.
Yeah, I honestly think that like it hits very good.
Yeah,
because especially since they build up the worm, like as you say, it's portrayed as being like as being a very big problem, and then at the near to the end of the movie, and they have this sort of confrontation where it just stares them down and moves on. It sort of weirdly humanizes it.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it makes it like it gives you sort of like reverence for the world that you're on, and I think that matches very much like what Paul is feeling. Like you don't feel like, oh thank God we just like escaped the monster. It's more just like yeah, as we mentioned a few times, like this is an animal and it's hanging out, it's doing worm stuff, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I also really loved, this is another like just loving the visual design, the whole like when the thing like the it doesn't like come up to eat you, it like that does this like thing where it like vibrates the sand and you start sinking in, and I was like, oh man, that's a really cool look. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I really like the look of the harvester eating scene.
Yeah,
because that too gave it. Cause I really like the impression of like almost as a sea monster almost. less than it coming out and being very dramatic and flashy. It's just like it
Yeah.
just sinks the desert sort of just claims it.
Yeah, and on that note, it also hits on two more things that I thought was good visual design, which is one, spice. Like every other adaptation, spice was just red sand basically, and I like that it had this
Hmm.
kind of like sparkly kind of design, so that like you can tell like, oh, there's spice in the air. But second, the other ones always treat spice like it's just some kind of neutral resource, like they're just like picking it up out of sand. When this one, like when it gets in the air, like it actually like makes people get high and stuff like that. And I'm like, because like it's supposed to
Yeah.
be a drug, but they don't really. It's never really treated much like a drug in the even in the book. Sometimes it's just treated like a thing that exists, but like the fact that like it gets splashed up in the air and it causes Paul to have like a little like episode, I thought was solid. 'Cause I don't think that happens in the
Yeah.
book or the movies. So I was like, or in things
Yeah.
before, but
Yeah, because even in the book they talk about it in a sort of like you get exposed to it over time, and it has like a long-term effect, sort of, unless you like take concentrated amounts of it. But then that never really happens, at least in the first book, as far as I know, that someone does that, and Paul and Jessica get exposed to it like as they travel the dunes or whatever. Um, and I thought it was really good, as you say, that yeah, it shows him just getting high of this substance because it splashes in his face,
yeah.
and now the spice it hits good.
You spice. Um, yeah, and I'm trying to think what else there was. There's so many fun things to poke at. Um, I liked another like I love the little world building things, like kind of like the sandworm design being very much like how would a worm like this live in this situation.
Mm.
I loved how it's like one of the coolest things is also about the Fremen's relationship with water and how its scarcity makes such a big thing. I love that they did all of this work to make spiced coffee, and at the end they're drinking like a couple drops, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh, like that's perfect,
it really hits good.
and that they're spitting into it, and also some people complained about this casting, but I thought the casting of Stilgar was so like perfect. Like he like embodied what like Fret like the sort of did the Fremen thing so well.
Yeah, in every single appearance that he made, I think he sort of got what Stilgar's vibe is.
Yeah.
Like very sort of cautious, bit hostile, but also like pragmatic in a sense.
Yeah, the other one that I also thought was controversial but good was that they gender swapped Liet Kynes, which I thought was fine. I don't know why some people had issues with that, but I thought it was fine. And when the thing, I don't, maybe they'll do this in the next movie or something like that. But because I think they did this in the Dune novel as well, which is that they kind of don't point out just how important Kynes is and how Kynes like single-handedly completely changed the destiny of the Fremen by just knowing ecology.
Yeah.
And like I because that's always like I think it's like in a appendix or something when they describe what he did to the Fremen, but cause does I don't even think Liet Kynes dies in the book, does he? Does he get killed by Harkonnens at one point?
I don't believe he does. I think but I think he just like gets like his role becomes a bit more reduced. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Liet Kynes. I'm gonna Google this.
Yeah, and I will say the other thing too that like everything that I was kind of not on board for when I saw it in the trailer, I got on board for when I saw it in the movie, like the sandworm no teeth design and the what's it called? The casting of friggin' what's his name? Jason Momoa. Like I didn't think much of Duncan Idaho being like a big buff like bro, but I thought it was just like, oh, Jason Momoa, he's famous right now. They want to tap another star actor, but he worked. He worked for him. He's the one character you're supposed to like. or or
Yeah.
or or understand as a person.
Someone just said Gola Momoa.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
future movie stuff, yeah.
I had a friend who I saw it with who hasn't read any books and stuff like that, and she was just like, "I liked him so much. I'm so sad he's dead." And I'm like, "Don't worry, you'll be all
Don't
right."
worry about it. He might be back. Couple of times.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, Liet Kynes dies in a spice explosion.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I don't remember that, so it may have been in an appendix, but because I don't remember it in the book.
But that all follows. I do think
Yeah.
that like yeah, Liet Kynes doesn't. Like the thing is that the book, even the book, like Liet Kynes is brought up as a significant character, but not like probably like as far as like changing the destiny of all these people might be one of the most significant characters in the entire Dune universe.
Yeah.
But like yeah, it just doesn't when they're actually on screen, just as kind of doesn't show it. For anyone who doesn't know, Liet Kynes basically describes the water cycle to the Fremen, and the Fremen are so blown away by the idea that you could terraform Arrakis to have green that they basically secretly focus their entire society's efforts to secretly preparing Arrakis to become a green world.
Yeah.
Um,
So all they're doing, they're like sieges, like
yes,
way underground, where they nurture their fucking water.
which then becomes a source of power because if they do that, they are basically going to make the sandworms go extinct, and that is how spice is made. So it like
Yeah.
this is another it's another kind of thing about how, and I've said this in streams, like how like if for example we had like an Arab Spring like pro democracy movement in Saudi Arabia right now, no country in the world would be able to let that happen. There is
Yeah.
no like the entire world economy is dependent on Saudi Arabia being a brutal monarchy, and every single country would devote tons of resources to preventing democracy in Saudi Arabia. The people there have to be oppressed because the entire economy is dependent on stable oil prices.
Yeah.
Same with China, I think, too. If China ever became a democracy, the entire world economy would be thrown into disarray every time there was an election, and yeah, and it's
That may,
horrible.
I think that may have been true a few years ago, but I think that's definitely true. Like, no, you're still right. Never mind. I thought wrong. You're still right. But and this is something that Frank Herbert was like writing about in the '60s.
Yeah,
Just like, hey, it's weird that our society is dependent on, uh, like power, like oppressing peoples far overseas on other worlds, and preventing them from like having their own destiny and having a good life because we need the resources that they have. Um, and like 50 years later, it's still fucking true.
So I guess the other thing we should hit before we get into questions is next movie, things to be hyped for. I wonder
Yeah.
what
It is greenlit.
Yeah, it has been greenlit officially. It's actually like one of the best performing Warner Brothers movies in a very long time. But Fade Rota. Oh yeah, that's another good visual design. All of the Harkonnen stuff looks suitably just grotesque and weird. I loved
Yeah.
it. I liked when
The
they
fucking
put.
eight-legged pet thing too that they just
Yeah.
had. Is that in the book? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Also, just what's his name? Freaking Vladimir Harkonnen recovering from the poison in a giant balsamic and olive oil thing for dipping bread. Thought that was great.
Do we have a little Harkonnen fondue?
Yeah, he's on Mediterranean diet now.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like the there is one thing that I wish would have been in the movie. Like one line from Harkonnen that I would have liked. Because I think I think it adds so much character to both the universe and also to him, like as a bad guy.
What's that?
because he has a line in the book where I think Raban says like, why don't we just like kill them? Like, just why don't we just like blow up their thing and just have it done with like super easily? Um, like in secret, so they just die. Like, and then we go back and it's fine. And Vladimir, it says something to that effect. And the Baron says, "No, I have to be face to face with him, and it has to be a spectacle, because otherwise, it's not a show of force to the other houses. Like it has to be cruel, it has to be brutal, because if it's not, then the entire like theater of it all to sort of like both to really cement the Emperor's power and also like our power here, um, it doesn't work as well. So it has to be brutal. We have to be cruel. We have to make it dramatic. And I think that because that adds so much, because like the Baron is obviously a bad guy who enjoys being cruel, um, but it gives him a sort of like, well, we have to do it, and I'm fine with that being that way. But it adds a sort of like extra dimension that I think gives a lot of character, um, to the world building, to the Baron, to the rivalry between the houses, and also like the intentions of the Emperor. That he's like happy using the Harkonnen as being like the bad guy, as like they choose to be the bad guy, and they're happy with being the bad guy. Um, Someone has to be the bad guy for the
Yeah.
Emperor.
Yeah, the other thing about like how the whole like the plot of the first Dune movie is basically Vladimir Harkonnen's great master stroke. It's his big move, and there wasn't I don't think there was a ton of energy put into like a lot of it feels like it was the Emperor's plan when like
Hmm.
Vladimir Harkonnen like really is supposed to like he doesn't get to be enough of an evil genius for that kind of part of it.
Yeah, because that is, and that also is, I think, is part like I think one more scene with the Baron, like saying that sentence and like really talking about, as you say, like his evil genius parts would have been good, because he's really fucking smart in the books. Like
Yeah.
he is tactical. Like the whole, and I like because they made sure in the movie too to like include a lot of like iconic lines, because people know the lines, people know the like Litany of Fear, and people know about like the boot fitting with the still suit for Paul. But they didn't include plans within plans within plans, and it's such a good line,
Yeah.
and I love it.
That's
It just
yeah,
yeah.
another part of the movie that I was like not super hyped about, but it worked when I finally saw the movie was Soren Sarsgaard as Vladimir Harkonnen. I didn't know how that was going to work. I thought he was like kind of too conventionally of a handsome guy to do the job of being like this like absolute disgusting figure that's he's supposed to be.
Yeah,
But it worked.
it worked.
He brought like because the other ones like in the other two movies, he's kind of a goof. He's kind of like a dopey, jokey character. But
Yeah,
like Soren
flies
Sarsgaard brought that
around. Yeah.
like dark menace that the books really brought through, which I thought worked really well.
Yeah, the scene where he says like that they're all going to die because it's my planet, my Arrakis, my dune, my desert, and he floats up and he says it in a dark voice, and it's all very dramatic. That I feel like that scene had, it was like on a knife's edge whether or not it would be goofy or menacing, and I think it's just perfectly enough for to be menacing.
Oh, sorry, Stellan Sarsgaard, not Soren Sarsgaard.
Yeah. Maybe they will include plans within plans scenes in a director's cut. If they do a director's cut of this, I will watch it. I don't know if Villeneuve is like the type of guy who does director's
Yeah,
cuts.
they did mention that there were a bunch of scenes cut from the movie to make its runtime shorter, and some of them were
Yeah.
like the Balisette Gurney Halleck scene where because they didn't get a lot of time with Gurney Halleck either. Um, the whole scene with the Balisette, which means that they would have done that party scene probably. That whole like reception party scene where Gurney Halleck
Yeah.
has the long talk with Paul about I can't remember what anymore. Because yeah, Gurney Halleck's time in there is very short, and he's just brought off as this like extremely intense warrior guy. But like he's supposed to be like the minstrel. He's supposed to, like
Yeah.
he's the guy who
He plays
plays music. He's like
And they
he's
only,
like the
that only,
musician bodyguard guy. That's his
yeah,
job.
and that only get mentioned once. Like, hey, do you want a song? No, let's fight. Um, yeah, exactly. I think that's good.
And also, yeah,
There's
what's that called?
also,
Mood is for what was it? Music and making love or something like that.
yeah, that's still in there, but it's not as
Yeah.
musicy. And there's also a scene where between Moynihan and Paul where um that was in the trailers, so I think it got cut like really late in production. Um, where he talks about like um your father's like losing a planet, and Paul says like, he's getting a new one. And Moynihan says that he's losing that one too. Like they're talking about like that as things are, you're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, and then later she says like, I hope you live, uh, human. And they kept the last part like, we hope you live. Um, but they cut the sort of like, you're fucked. They still got that vibe, so I can see why they cut it. Like they know that they're going into a trap. Um, but it would have been a nice scene. I really like the conversation between the witch and Paul. I think that's fun, like, especially early in the movie.
Yeah, the other scene that I saw that they cut was apparently they cut was a lot bit more of Thufir investigating the hunter seeker situation, which honestly is such a like red herring in the story. I'm surprised they even mentioned it. Like I'm surprised they even did the hunter
Yeah,
seeker because I'm like it's really even in the novel it's just like it's just a thing that they added that makes the Harkonnen seem less impressive, but at the same time.
yeah.
Um, like I don't know, it just it always just feels like a thing that was tacked on, and I'm like, you could have gotten rid of that entire thing, and it would have been fine. But whatever.
I honestly think that they should have. Like I know that I still love the movie, by the way. We're critiquing it a little bit now, but like we're nitpicky here because it's so fucking great. Um, but they honestly should have cut it, I think, because as you say, it's a red herring. The whole point of that entire scheme is to lull them into a false sense of security. But that doesn't really happen because they don't really have time to become comfortable again. Like even in the book, they never do in the book, but like in the book at least, they go on to have like a dinner and they go on to do other shit. Um,
The movie doesn't
but
really have that like them getting comfortable part.
yeah, or at least faking being comfortable.
Yeah.
Because again, plans within plans. Like the Harkonnens are doing this thing to like lull them into a false sense of security because they caught the obvious trap, but they know that it's obvious trap, so they have to fake it, and they think there's like a traitor, and they have to suspect Jessica, but they know it's not Jessica, but they have to pretend to think that it's Jessica. So plans within plans within plans.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And there's also like a little scene in the book where they're like they show the change between the guards of the two families where like they're like the whole like they have all these ritual like all these cultural things that also is like really good about like how they like the Harkonnens would do this thing where they would just dump water on the floor and then squeegee it up with a sponge and then sell the squeezings to the Fremen in the city, and it was like whew, like it like showed how evil they were and how like they end all that and like yeah I don't know that stuff.
yeah,
That's actually like kind of like a reference to I think it was like a medieval thing, trenches, where medieval nobles ate their meals on these like hard pieces of bread that they use as plates, and then they would sell that to the poor after, or they would give it to the poor after the after the banquets, basically.
yeah.
Anyways, we do when we're
Fucking movie.
yeah, it's a great movie. So we do occasionally when we're not worm posting talk about questions and stuff.
And I do like that you're cutting it off because we can talk about this for like 2 hours. We've been talking. Half the stream has been worm posting. It's such a good movie.
We'll come back. It'll happen. I did wish to see
Yeah.
more Thufir. Yes, Thufir was like I always thought mentats were really cool, and they never
Yeah.
get enough attention in any of the books or any of the movies from my taste. But anyways,
Apparently, there is a rumor. The last thing I promised to say, but there is a rumor of a 4-hour director's cut.
Ooh.
So if that exists, we are getting our fucking Lord of the Rings ass trilogy at last.
Yeah, that's like a double the length of the movie. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question I got here comes from Dazia for that says, okay, this is fun. This is probably I don't know if this might have been a discourse in Sweden, but it's definitely been a bit of a discourse here in Canada and the rest of the Commonwealth. How long do you think Queen Elizabeth II has to live, and what are the chances for each Commonwealth country has to abolish the monarchies when Lizzie dies, like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc.? So, Queen Elizabeth II is, according to Buckingham Palace, completely fine and just taking a few weeks off of doing things for the first time in like 50 years.
She's dead. She's dead. She's dead. She's dead. She has been dead. She died like 4 days ago.
She's perfectly fine in the same way that Prince Philip was completely fine for a routine medical thing earlier this year. Like, yeah, it's conspicuous that she's gonna do a pre-recorded thing for the climate change summit that she was apparently gonna go to, which I was like, wait, why was she going to that? But second, just like that. But like, I just love like it feels like they're doing the exact same playbook when they were trying to not tell the world that Prince Philip was dead.
Yeah. I honestly think that she died 2 days ago. We haven't seen her since, right?
And it's like the longest we've gone without seeing her too.
Yeah. And I fully believe it's because it's Halloween. Because like they don't want to have a dead queen on Halloween because every single Halloween after that people would make fun of the monarchy. Mm-hmm. So they've decided to just like weekend at Bernie's it for like 2 weeks until we're like in a more comfortable zone, and then we're like a peaceful.
I think she's. I'm not convinced that she's dead. I think she's sick, and she might be like terminally so because she's like in her freaking 90s. But and like the chances that she may die before the end of the year are higher than they've been in a long time. But yeah, like, oh, let's see. Got a story here. Resting Queen goes for a drive around the Windsor estate.
Oh damn, she is alive.
Wearing a babushka and sunglasses. I guess like that's definitely better looking than the time when Prince Philip was taken out of the hospital and literally just looked like they stuffed a corpse into the back seat.
Yeah. So what do you think the chances are that the Commonwealth are going to do? Because when our monarch dies, the monarchy is staying 100%. So what's the deal with in the Commonwealth?
See, so I think that there are some countries in the Commonwealth that have different levels of relationships or admiration for the crown. Like recently, like last month, Barbados dumped the Queen.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are some countries where she, like Queen Elizabeth dying specifically, is going to be the catalyst that like pushes them out of the Commonwealth. Like I have a feeling that that is a thing that's probably gonna happen. It's not gonna be all of them. There was a time when I don't know how much of this kind of crap that you follow, but there was a time when the prince, not the heir prince, but the other prince who married Meghan Markle, I think her name is. Anyways, where basically he like quit doing royal stuff and moved to America. But the thing is, you can't permanently live in America without renouncing all of your royal titles. That's a rule in the United States. American.
Wait, is it really an American rule?
That is a law in America. Yeah, you cannot live in America without, or you can't become an American citizen without renouncing all royal titles. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, because I just remembered like some Habsburg having to do that too. That's only good thing about American citizenship law.
Yeah. So I shit you not, this was one of the dumbest discourses we had here in Canada briefly, where it was like there was like a public almost like a campaign to get them to move to Canada as part of this whole ordeal, and there were some people who were even trying to float that they tried to float we will make you guys the king and queen of Canada if you like move to Canada. They didn't, because it turns out they don't want to be royalty. Turns out.
Yeah. Being
Um,
royalty can kind of suck.
sorry.
Being royalty can kind of suck sometimes in some
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah, so that's fun. Just one second. Apparently, I have to deal with a troll or something. Okay. Anyways,
Uh-oh.
yeah. So yeah, that's a thing. So I think that if the queen dies, first of all, it might be the best day on Twitter in human history.
Good God, can you imagine?
Twitter is going to be the absolute best it's ever been and ever will be. Because the liberal takes of being like trying to defend a grouchy old lady, a grouchy old racist lady who, while 1 in 5 Scottish people are living in poverty, is living in a multi-billion-dollar mansion. And trying to say you should feel bad for this person because I watched her on TV, so therefore I have made a parasocial relationship with this fucking leech on the UK.
Yeah.
But yeah, Twitter's going to be amazing because there's going to be the takes, the stupid like defending somebody like the fucking queen takes are going to be one thing, and then just all of the memes about Queen dead LOL type thing. All is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Then I think there will be some people who will consider moving. Like Canada is, we are like weirdly like we're more simps for the Queen than the UK is. It seems. Like I just found out that my city has a monarchist society of like people who just really like the monarchy and the Queen. And like there are people like here not like people who don't like the Queen is like, you know, limited to like maybe the French. That's about it. So there's a couple things. Like one, when it comes to the point where we have to then put fucking Charles on our money, then we have to like be like, oh God, no, thank you.
Charles on the money for a year, and then the next guy.
Yeah. So that's like a thing. I think there are some countries that are less enamored by the monarchy that are still part of the Commonwealth that I think might work towards republics. Like Australia, I think might do it. New Zealand, maybe. It would be funny if every country dumped the monarchy except for Canada, and then they have to like do like what's it called, like the King of Portugal during the Napoleonic era have to flee across the Atlantic to live in Canada for a few years until the monarchy returns to the UK. It's everyone's favorite alternate history thing that they always steal is forgetting the story of Emperor Pedro.
I was about to say, this is Kaiserreich all over again.
Yeah, well, it's because it's all stolen from probably one of the more interesting royal stories with Emperor Pedro, who, when the Portuguese monarchy had to leave Portugal during the Napoleonic era, they went to Rio de Janeiro for several years, and then when the Portuguese monarchy was restored, they all went home except for Pedro, who was like the young prince who was like who had grown up in Rio de Janeiro, so decided to stay. And then he declared himself Emperor of Brazil and broke off, and they just kind of like that's how Brazil got its independence. So it's like it's a weird part of the story, but people always think that's really cool. And then like there's like 1,000 alternate history stories that's just like, what if that happened, but with the British royal family?
It would be interesting to see.
Did you know
I don't think it would return though. Like if the UK gets rid of it but Canada doesn't, I think that's just the way it's gonna be now.
Mm-hmm.
For like for one generation, and then it's gonna die.
But I do sense though that a lot of like this is one of those things where I think that that a lot of the Commonwealth's dedication to the monarchy only seems so stable because we're not in a world where Queen Elizabeth is dead yet, and when she dies, and like the reality of like, oh, are we gonna do King Charles? Is this a thing we're going to do? That a lot of people's positions will change, because I think a lot of people just like the Queen for some reason.
Yeah.
I have no idea why, but there are some people who just like that racist old bat, and are staying through just through her personality. And there's a lot of people who hate Charles because they really liked Princess Diana and he cheated on her.
Yeah. That's gonna be very interesting to see if it survives, actually.
Yeah, Princess Camilla and everyone trying to make that happen. It'll be a whole thing. So I don't know. I think that once that actually it feels a lot. It's one of those things that feels a lot more stable than it is, and it's one of those things that I think will, like, dumping the monarchy is one of those things that's going to sound impossible right up until it feels inevitable. That's my take. I think it's going to be like all at once. You'll be surprised how fast people start dumping it. Did you know that the PM has to meet with the Queen once a week? If Corbyn had become PM, he'd have to visit the Queen once a week. Man, I would pay to see those meetings. If Jeremy Corbyn had to sit with the Queen, a guy who like wants to get rid of the monarchy,
Would be very funny.
Mm-hmm.
He did have to renounce his anti-monarchism a little bit, though. That he wouldn't actively work against the Queen, but he said something along the lines of like, if he doesn't like the Queen, but like if enough people want the Queen, then he's fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
He sort of have to sort of like hedge his bet a little bit there.
I guess loyalty to
that on, yeah.
Yeah, I guess loyalty to Diana will not get through everything because, I mean, the current Queen murdered Princess Diana, so I mean,
allegedly.
That is the United Kingdom version of Bush did 9/11, I think.
Yeah, for sure. The Queen did hit Diana.
I mean, it's one of those things like even if it didn't happen, it definitely happened.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Okay. So yeah, that'll be fun. I what's it called? If the Queen is indeed dead or dying or in like kind of circling the drain right now, it'll make the next year or so very interesting because this is quite a time for it to happen. With the UK like having a fucking economic disaster brought upon by the UK, basically, like, the UK has recently, is in the last panel of that meme where somebody's riding along on a bike and sticks a stick in their own spokes of the wheels and then falls over and blames something completely unrelated to that. They're basically in the throes of that right now, trying to figure out what that is, you know?
Oh, I think they figured it out. It's immigrants and trans people.
Yeah. Yeah,
society's falling apart.
There was some people making jokes about how like the Times is going to try to write about how trans people caused the Queen to die.
Okay. I've literally seen shit like that though, like to that effect. That's not even an exaggeration.
Mm-hmm.
The things I'm reading coming out of Turf Island recently are fucking wild.
Yeah, but like the Queen dying would be the perfect cherry on like this whole season of the UK just reaping what it's been sowing for like centuries.
Going into Brexit being like, we're going to take control of our independence, our economy, we're going to become a great power again, and at the end of it all, no economy, bad international relation, the Queen's dead, economic disaster.
Probably, what's it called? Probably like losing probably like, almost definitely it's like a matter of time now for Scotland, and North Ireland probably is not close after because they're like currently fighting the European Union about North Ireland because the thing that everyone said was going to happen, which is they were going to do Brexit and then they were not going to figure out North Ireland and it was going to cause tons of issues, happened and nobody planned for it at all.
Yeah.
They've got like, what's it called? They've got They've got groceries rotting in port because they can't get through because of freaking the free trade zone's been destroyed because of Brexit. Like, it's just Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, United Kingdom.
You're doing great.
Yeah, they're fighting with France over fishing waters in the English Channel. Like, it's just like, it's going great. UK is just having having the normalist of ones these days.
Yeah, you're doing great, sweetie.
And they're channeling all of that energy of their country just falling to pieces into hating trans people, which is just random. That's been since the last couple weeks. That's been fun. Now they're importing it. They're trying to import it to Canada. They're trying to make turf Canada a thing with the whole Margaret Atwood story.
Yeah.
Like the CBC tried to run a story like doctors quote unquote concerned about how many people are trying to get gender confirmation treatments these days, and it's like, are we really doing this? We're really trying to do this in Canada? Okay.
Again.
Yeah.
But like that story, it's the same story just being republished in different countries every like 3 years.
Yeah. I thought that we were going to have like more American style transphobia, like our conservatives being shitty, which was kind of how it was going. I did not know we were going to get liberal transphobia through the turf discourse. I thought we had become so Americanized it was going to be the American style, but
You're still a little bit British in the core.
yeah. What did Atwood do again? She promoted an article that was like, "Why can't you say women anymore?" And once she got called out for that, people have been pointing out that she's been like secretly going to turf conferences and like all sorts of stuff. So,
which is weird because she's been kind of going back and forth on this a little bit. Because like a few years ago, she liked some like dicey tweets, and people were like, "You okay?" And she then eventually she posted a thing about like in support of trans people generally, and people were like, "Okay, right, all right, cool." And then that comes out, and he's just like, "Okay, well."
I mean, even J.K. Rowling, in her mind, thinks that she supports trans people.
Yeah, I don't think Margaret Atwood was like even close to being like the worst turf out there. So I don't really. I know that a lot of people are trying to like drum up a thing about it, especially people who are turfs. But I don't actually think that like a lot of trans people really care.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like a few years ago, I think that people would be a bit more upset. But I think that J.K. Rowling has just like put the bar so high for what is seen as like unacceptable like writer behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That I honestly don't really give a shit.
I did.
I'll go to dinner with Margaret Atwood. I don't care. Like she hasn't at least said that trans people are trying to like destroy women's shelters by existing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I will say that it didn't catch on. The story's pretty much dead already. So
Yeah.
Canadian trying to the British are trying to find some commodity to export, and turfism did not do well in the Canadian market. So
Maybe it'll get a little bit of both.
Is America
Both
better
American and
than
British.
is America better than Britain on trans issues? It's different. They're more like the thing is like in America, it's the people who are spouting transphobia are the people who have phobias about everything. They're just like they're the same people who are the racist, the sexist, the homophobes. They're the right-wing reactionary conservatives. While Europe's trying to do this weird like liberal like isn't the inclusive thing to do to be to hate trans people. It's like come on. Like it's I don't know, you know this. Europe's going through like you're like this I don't know. This whole like I don't even understand like they found this like liberal way to circle around to bigotry that has just been really weird to watch.
Well, trans people are clearly in power in society, and are also invented the patriarchy and capitalism.
Yeah.
Didn't you know?
I'm learning so much.
See, there are these Bolshevik Jewish people who invented the transness in the 1930s, and then the conversation spirals from there.
Yeah. Okay.
The thing that I'm actually surprised about is like a lot of the Nazis, because I'm making a Nazi reference, like Judeo-Bolshevik infiltration of society. Like I'm making like because I think that people who are transphobic have a lot of alliances with Nazis for some reason. I'm surprised that a lot of these people are not mentioning Magnus Hirschfeld. Because like that is like because that is a socialist Jew in Germany. But I think because he's like pretty well remembered, it's just like a good guy. a lot of the sort of like anti-Semite and anti-communists who often use like anti-turf discourse, anti-trans discourse to sort of like become part of mainstream discourse. Um, I'm surprised that they don't bash him and
Hmm.
like use him as an example. Good for him, honestly. I'm very happy to see that he's like uh, spared this.
Yeah, I feel like you would be.
He's simply too rad to easily slander. Yeah, exactly, Nightmare. He's too cool.
I feel like your need to protect in that situation would be pretty strong. If everyone was
Exactly.
Hirschfeld posting, it would be like a monkey's paw for you. You're like, I wish everybody knew about Magnus Hirschfeld and talked about him, and then yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's fucking weird. But yeah, the Margaret Atwood thing might just be that she just boomered a little bit, but we'll see
Yeah.
because it does.
We'll see how far that goes.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how deep it goes because it could. It sounds like from what I'm hearing is that she might have been turf curious for a little bit, but might
Mm.
have kind of backed away from it, but still has kind of like because she is like if you know Margaret Atwood's career, she's very, very, very embedded in like peak second wave feminism, and for people who have developed so much of their intellectual activism through that probably it'll probably be more work than most, especially if you're old and your opinions are inflexible. So who knows, maybe that's just me not wanting to hate Margaret Atwood yet, but we'll see what comes out in the future. The other thing too, this is a thing I did in my D&D game because I made an offhand joke about this where they were talking about a wizard college, and I was just like, yeah. Well, this isn't the main wizard college. This is the other wizard college that broke off because the main wizard college was being transphobic. um, okay, there's a lot. Okay, boomer too close to the sun. Exactly. All right. Um,
We're too close to the sun.
the
I feel like
next,
you can boomer too close to the sun, and then you can do like J.K. Rowling and boomer too close to the sun and decide to go into the sun.
yeah. Oh man, she has doubled down so much that she's turning into like a spatial singularity. Because like
Mathematicians have thought that a person can only double down 7 times before it becomes mathematically impossible to double down again. But
mhm.
J.K. Rowling has discovered a new method by which she can double down another eighth time.
She has doubled down so much that she's been able to turn hydrogen into helium. Uh, okay. The next thing we got
What?
here is a history question that feels like this is another one of those like things that comes up every once in a while that I don't know how to answer because it's like, um, why is this? This question sounds like you're trying to get me to do your homework, but maybe you know what this is because I sure as hell don't. It sounds like you're a
Uh,
Europe question. Someone asked roughly what was the Holy Alliance and how relevant was it to political instability in Europe around 1850? Like that literally sounds like somebody trying to get an answer to their homework question.
that definitely sounds like that. The Holy Alliance, I'm doing a quick Google now to see if I can remember what it is. Yeah, it's between Russia, Austria, and Prussia to like be anti-revolutionary. I don't know enough about it. It definitely sounds like a homework question though. Which I do appreciate. Um,
I appreciate the
but
what's it called the the grind set here.
yeah, never stop the grind. I'm trying to. I don't really know how influential it was, because this is like right before my area of history starts. Um, I guess it's. I guess it did okay. I don't know.
I mean, it
I
shouldn't
wish
have
I knew
lasted
quite
that
a bit.
long because not too long, Russia and Prussia were basically at each other's throats in the 19 teens. So, like, what's it called?
Yeah.
Russia and Germany were they did a World War I against each other. I don't know if you guys heard. Um, okay, here's one that's perfect and also is very applicable to you. What is your personal rat park?
Oh. Uh. God, I don't know what a personal rat park is. I mean, a rat park would be a society where I don't have to pay rent,
Oh
and
man,
food is free.
that would be nice.
If rent and food is free, I'm happy. That's Rat Park for me. And
Oh,
free video streaming or whatever, then I'm happy.
yeah, man. If I just didn't have to worry about how much things cost, that'd be like that's Rat Park all the way. It's like life's pretty good if I just didn't have to like always be worrying about what my bank account looks like.
Yeah.
Like I got a gym membership last month, and now I'm like being like, how am I gonna pay for this goddamn thing? Um, and it's just like I shouldn't have to like be like, how am I going to afford getting healthy, please?
Yeah, I honestly, there's back in the day when Sweden was like almost a socialist utopia, almost didn't quite get there. You could get government food at the or go live in government house and go to the government gym. That was all either extraordinarily subsidized or free. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we could have this again
Yeah.
if only if only Jeff Bezos would like be a bit chiller.
All right. I'm gonna take a quick washroom break, but somebody in the chat did ask what is Rat Park, and since you're the one who did a video on this very topic, I
Ah,
will hand over the reins of it to you so you can explain it, and I will be just a second.
you do that.
Alrighty.
Wonderful. Hi, folks. Rat Park is an experiment made by a scientist whose name I don't remember because it was 2 weeks since I made this video. Um, but it's an experiment in the 70s where you take a rat, you take hundreds of rats, you put them in hundreds of cages, individual, and they have two bottles of water. Um, and one of them is normal water, one of them has like heroin and drugs in it. And if they have nothing else to do, if they're just like in a metal cage, the rats will drink the water with heroin and drugs in it, and they will drink it until they overdose and die. But if you give them Rat Park, if you give them like a big enclosure with space, other rats to hang out with, enrichment, plenty of food, varied diets like exercise, just like a heaven, like a nice place where they can be. But you still give them like their two bottles of water. Um, they will still drink from both of them. They'll still drink a little bit from the ones with drugs, but they won't drink as much to the point where they become addicted. They don't drink to the point where they overdose. They will see it more as like just water. Um, they don't like they don't hate it, so they don't like go away from it, but they don't choose it. They don't lean into Rat Park. And the idea behind this is a psychological conclusion of if if the rat simply have like a life circumstance that works for them, then they don't have to sort of resort to harmful coping mechanisms. And if you apply this to humans, you can it's primarily about addiction, right? It's about drug addiction, but you can also apply it to any type of like harmful coping behavior, which would include like paying rent. Um, but we don't have a choice, right? Like in that option, we have homelessness or we have pay rent, um, and we will have to pay rent because it's the better option, but it's still not a good option, and the cage is still shitty. Um, so we are forced to resort to a behavior that harms us because paying rent makes it so that we don't have any money, or eating a bad diet because we can afford better food, things of that nature. That's Rat Park. So Rat Park is it's a good heaven for rats. And if we had like Rat Park for humans, that would be like better housing, free housing, not having to worry about like our life as much. And the idea is that then humans won't like do drugs as much. Like that's a drug analogy. But it would also go into like just developing like unhealthy behaviors generally. Um, so that's Rat Park.
I have returned perfectly.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. Alrighty. Let's here we go. Yeah, Rat Park is yeah, so I was away. Can you explain the whole thing again? No. Uh I watched the video. I know the story of Rat Park. It's pretty good. I like Googled it later and I was like, "Oh, it's actually called Rat Park." Okay. Um
Yeah, it's not something I didn't even have to make it up. It's just called Rat Park. It's
yeah,
great. It's called the Rat Park Experiments if you want to like look into it as a specific thing. Uh,
your video by the way on anti-psychology like literally like perfectly encapsulated everything that I felt about psychology. Um
I'm glad. I've actually gotten like emails by like a lot of people saying that as well, including from like people who deal with psychiatry. That that I that I that I did good, and I'm very happy about that.
and also while I was gone, thank you Eno Etile for the $1.99 super chat, much appreciated.
Love it.
So yeah, because like that was a really good video. That I learned a lot more from that video than like a lot, and it was like because like the thing is like my wife's a psychologist, and
Hmm.
when she left the field, like when she graduated and decided to not do academia, it was right when social psychology was basically like just completely falling apart because they found out that none of the experiments could be replicated.
Yeah.
And that a lot of the foundational experiments in that field were just completely like the famous like Milgram experiment with the like electric shocks, where they
Hmm.
turned out that they just discounted all the people who were like, I'm not going to shock a person for answering a question wrong.
Yeah.
Or like how the Stanford prison experiment, the people who just naturally became cruel when given authority were egged on to do such a thing.
Yeah. Egged on and also like taken from a very specific subset of people, and like basically told that that was like what they were supposed to do, which is less a thing about like how people get cruel, right? And more a thing about how people will just like they they don't want to fight as much.
Yeah, and then
Turns out that when a person like tells you to be cruel, then they'll sometimes they will be cruel, but only sometimes. Not always, depending on the situation, which is why like all of these fucking experiments don't always show the same conclusion.
yeah, I
The
always
replication crisis is something that I wanted to talk about in the video, by the way, but I didn't have time.
yeah, the Milgram experiment at least gives me like because like there was like this like because both of those were part of this like chain of experiments to be like how did people become Nazis basically, how did the Nazi regime manage to accomplish it, how can we like absolve all the people who did war crimes by saying no, it's just a part of human psychology, it's just part of human nature that we listen to orders and stuff like that, and when it's like oh no, it turns out that's not the case.
Mm,
Trying to and then like so it's like oh like all of this stuff about humans being naturally cruel and capricious and are prone to following orders turns out to not be true. And that maybe there's a little bit more of like soul searching that like the Germans of that age need to do about why what about that ideology led them to there. And then
mm.
your whole video kind of just, I mean, maybe this is a general over generalization, but it's like oh yeah, a lot of like our quote unquote like a lot of our mental health needs come from the fact that basically like a lot of psychology is trying to ameliorate the symptoms of living under capitalism.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And that's sort of the main point of what I wanted to do with my video, right? It's sort of like psychiatry can be a great thing, and psychology can be a great thing too. But like as you say, like we're living in a society, and like we can't like fix things with psychiatry or psychology that are caused by like non-psychological or like non-brain causes, basically.
Hmm.
Um, like it's more it has more to do with like like where we are as people, as a society. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the fact that like we're so desperate to try and find ants. Like I was kind of thinking for this is something that I was thinking of when I was thinking about how liberals interpret oppression and like bigotry and discrimination and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Before we kind of got the Ptolemaic idea of the way that the universe runs, right? Like or how the solar system looks. Like when we thought that everything was just spheres and gems that orbit the Earth, and that like the Earth is the center of the universe, right?
Uh-huh.
The way that astronomers of those days wrote about all of these bodies, like the orbit of the planets, the orbit of the stars, and stuff like that, was that they had to have these extremely elaborate and strange orbits that they had no physical explanation for how any of it worked, because they were interpreting all these things for how they moved around the Earth, and like kind of reverse engineering it so that it was like the Earth is the center of the universe. So therefore, that means that Venus has to like go like this around the Earth, like that's how it must move, right? Because that's
Yeah,
how it
yeah,
works. And it's just like it's just them not being able to perceive like, oh no, it's because this isn't orbiting you, it's orbiting the sun.
yeah, exactly.
And I always think of like how a lot of times when people talk about, like I was reading this book on that was sort of like a primer on like race discourse in America specifically, which it was a good book for like what it was trying to do, but it kept making me think like, oh, like at the end of the day, it was fundamentally a liberal understanding of social justice issues, where
Yeah,
they see all these injustices and discriminations in the world, but when like the closest they can ever get to like where does this come from, where does it originate, they just go to like, oh, it's just human nature that this happened. And it's like, whence does where does racism come from? And every answer comes down to, oh, it's just
yeah,
like an innate thing in humans. And it's like, well, that's not a great answer. And then it seems like also a lot of psychology is just like they have this ideology that at its core capitalism can't be flawed, it can't be wrong. So
yeah,
therefore we're constructing all of these extremely, like we have the DSM, right, the extremely elaborate collection of things that are called mental illnesses, to try and explain essentially the constellation of symptoms of just the absolute atrocity, the absolute horror of living in late capitalism.
yeah. And like the thing is, like a lot of people in psychiatry, like they know that, and they can't do fuck all about it
Yeah.
because the like they can do like a bunch of studies or whatever. Like they can try their best to sort of like study the phenomenon, like, but you can't remove society or like capitalism from the equation. Like it's always present, and that will always muddy the results of any study that you're doing. Um, and the result is like you're still gonna end up with people being sent to you, like especially if you're working like mental health fields, who you can't help because the problem that they're suffering with has nothing to do with psychiatry. But because of the symptoms that they're experiencing, they still end up there. So it's something that's like very frustrating among psychiatrists too. That I mean, the people who like know that something's fucked up here.
Yeah,
Not everyone does.
you
Um,
can't what's it called, you can't cure capitalism, but you can't get rid of capitalism, but you can prescribe an SSRI.
yeah, exactly. And like you can help sort of.
You can
Um,
numb the pain.
yeah, which it's very depressing for a lot of people.
Because yeah, because there's a lot of stuff in there, like, because I'm not saying that there's not anything to this, but like when you're like, okay, this is interesting, like there's these rising rates of depression and anxiety and all these things,
Hmm.
and then if you ask them like, well, where does it come from, they'll be like, oh, it's just innate to human nature. We just, it's just genetic. Which, like,
Yeah.
there's some like maybe genetic predispositions, but like, it's just like genetics would not explain why all of a sudden like 1 in 4 people have depression these days, or
Yeah, yeah. Like why depression is more pronounced in areas with like higher like economic downturn.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so
someone said Nightbear in the chat also wondered if universal basic income experiments have psychological angles, and they do study the psychological impact of them, but they're not seen as core of the experiments. So I know that like in Finland and I think maybe in Iceland they did like a short trial of basic income thing, and they wanted to see like if it increased like production, productivity, and things of that nature, and it barely did. Uh, and it didn't cost anything because like it sort of paid for itself, but it didn't like pay more for itself than it cost. It just sort of like evened out basically, um, because people worked as hard as they wanted. Um, but then what they saw was, uh, while they didn't lose any money, people, and while didn't gain any money, people felt so much better. Like the rates of anxiety, depression, stress just plummeted like super quickly. But that's not the point of why economists want to do basic income. They want to do basic income to save on costs. And because it doesn't really save on costs, it can, depending on what the basis of the experiments are and who you're targeting. But because it doesn't, like, as a rule, like, increase wealth production, it's seen as a failure. It's seen just, well, the experiment didn't work, which is which is such a weird way to sort of measure success, right? When you do these such, like, the point of these things. Because if the point is money, then yeah, it doesn't work. But if the point is like human well-being, then it definitely does work.
Yeah. We had a pilot program for that here in Ontario that then the Conservatives won and they axed it. But yeah, like basic income has so many problems, but it would be such a step up for so many people.
Mm,
Yeah, because like I don't love it. It's a band-aid, and it has a lot of problems that will show up as soon as you do implement it. But
hmm
I do think that if I had to choose between the way things are now and life with basic income, I would choose it in an instant.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I don't know, like it's just like every time. This is why like I always this is one of the curious things. Like you always ask like, well, where does this come from? What does it happen? I feel like you always get to ideology interfering in things when you get to like, oh, well, that's just human nature. I really liked how you pointed out drapomania in the thing, where that
Yeah.
perfectly shows that like the how a lot of like psychology does this sort of like the people who believe that the Earth was the center of the universe just make these elaborate thoughts to try and forget about the fact that their ideology is just unseen and they can't even perceive it was because it was a belief that there was this mental illness among enslaved people who felt depressed and anxious about their situation and desired to escape. And that was obviously a mental illness, so they had to take care of it. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Was Which is obvious to us now in hindsight, and was also obvious to people in like the northern U.S. states, being like, "This is obviously fucking stupid."
Yeah.
Like, of course, that's not the reason. But if you
See,
live in a society where you can't fathom a society that works differently, like you have to sort of rationalize that this is the way that makes sense, and anything else is like a deviation or like something wrong with it. Then yeah, you're gonna find an excuse.
this makes me like want to do, even though like I think it's the most hacky and overdone alternate history thing. Alternate history, modern day, Confederate States of America, it's still around, it still practices slavery, and like the liberals in the Confederate States are like, oh, like we need to improve mental health. Like we have just like
Right.
there's epidemic levels of drapomania breaking out, and we have like psychopharmaceuticals that help them manage this obviously genetic condition. Um, and then like I just want like because I remember there was that Vice article that I always just remember. It'll be scarred into my brain until the day I die, where they were like, how could you get rid of private healthcare? Because look at how many women work in the health insurance industry. Are you? This is why being for public healthcare is anti-woman. And I was just like, do you know how many women work in the agricultural industry? Do you know how you are going to like by advocating for abolition, you are hurting women? And I'm like, I could
You're
see like
hurting girl boss. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, I could see a like if there were like liberals in this Confederate States like them trying to make those kinds of arguments. Oh man, there's gotta be a short story at least in this kind of stuff about the liberal party of the Confederate States of America, who are defending like the absolute horrors of slavery through the same way that liberals today defend the horrors of capitalism,
Yeah.
using primarily appropriated social justice language.
Yeah. That's a good writing prompt for anyone out there.
That is a fucking cursed alt history. Yeah, for
Yeah.
real. I have my brain. My brain is horrible, you guys. I have my I have a brain that marinates in the darkest experiences in human nature and just kind of lives with it, and then these things come up. So
Yeah, that's called being a historian.
Yeah, my brain is fucking broken, okay? In so many ways. Okay, the next question we got here comes from Caleb. Have you given any thought to how you're going to explain your current profession to your kids someday? Streamer income has more to do with monetizing parasocial relationships than specific subject matter. Whew. How am I going to explain my job to my son who is going to be here in 2 months?
I'm so fucking excited for that, by the way.
Oh boy.
But how would you?
So here's the thing. I was raised by essentially a software engineer and an accountant. So when I was a kid, I was basically raised to think you can become a doctor, a scientist, a mathematician. Like you can get a job as a programmer, accountant, or like any job that is STEM heavy and has very dependable income, and every other job is bad. And I've always been creative, and I always push back against that. And honestly, the way I'm going to describe my job is that is like an artist, because that's the closest thing that I can think of is being an artist, and that if it was something they wanted to pursue, it would be a matter of me explaining like, you can do it, you can make a career out of it. God knows I somehow did, but it is keep in
But
mind.
you shouldn't.
I'm not going to say that they shouldn't. Like if my kid wanted to be an actor or a musician, I would say no. Or I would say yes. You could do that if you wanted to. Just keep in mind that it is a discipline that is focused on that uses people's passions against them to pay them less, which means that you're going to have to rely on you have to know that you are basically taking a pay cut. Now you're going to have to work like 5 times harder than anybody else to make less money. But so you have to love what you're doing enough, because a lot of people get into a lot of people who want to become YouTubers or want to become actors or musicians do it because they want the fame and fortune. And if they are going to actually be successful, you have to know no, there is a very high chance you can become a musician. Anybody can become a professional musician. Just know that it's going to take a lot of work, and you're not going to make as much money as you think you are unless you're extraordinarily lucky in a way that very few people get to be.
Yeah, that sounds like that's probably the best answer that I could come up with.
But yeah, the whole
I'm gonna defer to you on that because you are on your way to having a child.
Yeah,
I am. I'm not, so I'm not really invested in the question as much. I haven't really given it much thought.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you want it, someone just mentioned about how their cousin wants to be an actor, but their mom's trying to talk them into becoming a drama teacher. And it's sometimes if you want to be a guitarist, sometimes the thing that you do to be a professional musician is teach kids music. And you have to love just the act of making music and playing guitar enough that would make you happy. Because if you do it because you want to be a rock star, you're going to flame out. That's going to be impossible. It's not going to be impossible, but it's not likely enough that you can rely on it.
It's statistically improbable.
Mm-hmm. But if you love what you're doing enough, you will find a way to turn it into something that you can live on. Just know that you're going to that you are essentially taking a pay cut. If I had channeled all of my energy into becoming an accountant, I would be much richer than I am now. But instead, I just had to be an artist.
Yeah, if I had, exactly. If any YouTuber, almost any YouTuber, for very few exceptions, had focused on an office job instead, they would have more money than they do now.
Yeah,
it goes for even a lot of big YouTubers.
Yeah, I make less money than I did working part-time at a nonprofit. So, just so you know, really,
I'm proud to say that I earn more money now than I've ever done in my entire life, but that's because I haven't had a job.
Yeah,
I've been a student and I've been a student and an actor, and a model, and none of those things pay well.
Yeah, I'm glad that I got across this because I will tell this. I am aggressively bad at every job I've ever had. Like I have like it's not even funny how bad I was at every job I ever had. I have been fired but from 2 jobs for being bad at it. And I my last job, my boss yelled at me probably 4 or 5 times a day for just completely not knowing what the hell I was doing.
God bless.
Yeah. So I'm glad I fell into this gig because holy shit, there was I got fired from flipping burgers because I was too slow at cooking hamburger. Like, yeah. So you just that's life.
That is life.
Uh,
People become artists because that's just what we need to do. Like, if you don't fit in, then you don't fit in.
Flipping burgers is hard work. I agree. I was also like 15 at this time, but man, there is no job that I could figure out. Even like my last job, which was at a nonprofit, and all my job was running the nonprofit's Twitter account and answering calls from journalists. Even that, I was just awful at. All right.
I know the feeling. I haven't had many jobs, but even when I worked in an office for one job, I fucking sucked at it so bad.
For all you Canadians out there, that job that I got fired from for being bad at cooking hamburger was a Harvey's, which is a fast food chain that only exists in Canada. I also, well,
I still you still did better at that job than I did because I applied to work at burger joints when I was a teenager and like early 20s, and I never got one.
oh my.
I've been denied for many burger jobs.
See, this is what happens when you have a minimum wage of $3,000 an hour like you do in Sweden.
Saying they can't hire.
Yeah. Socialism is when no hamburger.
No, socialism is when hamburger is $20.
Yeah. You have to take out a mortgage to get your hamburger because they're just the like absolute like just all of the workers are just going home to their palatial mansions from their extremely high minimum wage.
Wonderful.
Everyone's talking about now they're hungry. Oh man.
I also crave burger now.
Yeah. My lunch is going to be what's it called? Hummus and cauliflower. So which I'm excited for actually.
That sounds great actually, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna cut up some cauliflower and dip it in hummus. That is the perfect lunch. Okay. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question. I kind of answered the question. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about land back in regards to Cyprus. All right, Christos, let's see how this goes. This was inspired by land back, but is relevant to Cyprus, which is very different. In Cyprus, there are Turkish settlers from the invasion of 1974, different from Turkish Cypriot. All negotiation processes have accepted a number of people will stay. Some of these people are soldiers, but others are poor, Alevis, and Kurds. Basically, anyone who's stayed there for a generation will stay, as will their kids. Is the fact that I, as a Greek Cypriot, accept it and think that they shouldn't leave bad in any way? P.S. Note that some people who want all settlers to leave are also always right-wingers. Interesting. Oh man.
Yeah.
How the turntables, Cyprus.
Cyprus once again comes in with the exception.
The Mongols of the Mediterranean, if you will, as they're known. Wait, wasn't there a time where like people from Cyprus were like actually like, invading all over the Mediterranean? Like aren't they the sea people? Or not?
I know that there's a theory that they're the sea people, but I don't think anyone's sure.
Cyprus throwing a curveball, yeah.
I think I think every situation I think is a bit unique, right? Because like even as I mentioned when we talked about land back last time, like in Sweden, like there's not really a land back discussion just because the situation is very different, and I think that this situation is also pretty different, and it's hard to sort of like take a sort of like general rule ish or like a general sort of like a method of doing activism and apply it generally. right? Like I don't think that like I wouldn't apply like land back methods or rhetoric to, for example, like Israel and Palestine. Like there are there are similarities, but I don't think you could apply the same method because I don't think that it would work. Um and um and I think that the situation in Cyprus would probably have to have like its own sort of method of doing it, which would be that like um I think the overall goal of like all of these ideas are that people who are like marginalized and people who need who need support, for lack of a better term, are the people who should have the biggest voice in that conversation, right? So like because that's like that's sort of like the same from all of these situations. Um and as you say, like if people on if people at the like the Greek Cypriot side are fine with it, and people on the and if the negotiations are in the sense of like that, like if if the Turkish Cypriot like side are like a lot of poorer people, people who maybe have been sent there for lack of a better option, then I think that that also like deserves a voice in that sort of like discussion, and I think that that would probably have the details of that would have to be structured uniquely for Cyprus. But I think as long as we listen to people who typically are not given a voice, I think that is the most important thing.
It says here the Turkish Cypriots were in ghettos from 63 to 74, hence why they want their federal state. And many settlers are very poor and face racism from Turkish Cypriots. Interesting. I could say this is how you asking a historian was very much the wrong historians was the wrong thing to do because we refuse to believe in theory and want every single situation to be done unique depending upon the context of that explicit situation.
Getting called out. Yeah, you're right.
Thick description, everybody. That's the theory. That's the closest thing that historians have to theory is thick description, which is a whole thing about. God, do you remember thick description from history methods?
No.
About how history is not supposed to be about like there's no grand theories or grand like narratives of history because our job is not to take theoretical constructs and impose them on the past, but to just do thick description, i.e., describing the things that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, but there is like a sort of like until the 90s, history like actively rejected critical theory as like a method to look at the past. It's become more of a thing now, but there is something about like how there's a reductive way of just taking some grand theory and applying it to everything willy-nilly. And yeah, I would imagine that the good answer to the historian answer, I think, to what to do about this particular case in Cyprus is to take experts on this topic and have them talk out about what would be the right thing to do because context is important. Like land back, I think, yeah, only really makes sense in North America because their settler colonialism in North America is very much in that vein. When like
exactly.
like in a like for example, it'd be a very different story than like say Mexico, where 60% of the population is mestizo, which means that they are part indigenous and part Spanish. So yeah, different story.
Different story.
Oh boy. Apparently, we're supposed to ban everybody whose name is Let's Go Brandon. Apparently, it's a chud thing. I don't know.
Why is Twitch so asshole-ish again? Has the
Yeah.
raid stream stopped yet, by the way? The hate raids?
I don't know. That would involve them doing something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so probably not.
Next question we got here is what happened to Tristan Won't Shut Up? That's a question for me. That answer would be I found out that if I talked about the things that I would have talked on Tristan Won't Shut Up on Step Back, that it reached way more people and nobody seemed to care that I wasn't talking about history anymore. That was the main thing. I was like, this is going to be the channel that I make my stuff that's not about history because everybody who watches Step Back watches it for history and they don't want any of this other stuff. But then I just made videos about whatever on Step Back, and nobody has made a single complaint about it. So I just kind of rolled with it from there on. That's really all there is to it. But let's...
Also, Googling Let's Go Brandon, apparently it is a thing that's happening in the US, like the last 24 hours. I can't keep up with all this discourse, but it's apparently it's an anti-Joe Biden, pro-Trump thing, so.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I do like when the like chuds think that the main thing to make socialists mad is to criticize Joe Biden. It's just like, bruh. I don't know if there's anybody who has shit on Joe Biden more than I have.
We hate Joe Biden too.
Yeah.
For different reasons.
But I love that they think that like socialists love Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Freaking.
Every day I think about the Piers Morgan interview with Ash Sarkar talking about like where he accuses Ash of being like, well, you didn't protest against Barack Obama. You love Barack Obama. And she has to like yell out in the interview just like, I don't like Barack Obama. I'm a communist.
Yeah. Ash Sarkar fucking rules.
Yeah.
I actually got into Step Back after watching Tristan Won't Shut Up first. Yeah. I mean, like, the thing is that Tristan Won't Shut Up was doing fairly well. It's just that I realized, like, I was making videos and I'm like, why am I not just putting this on Step Back? Because it works. And then I was just like, and so I tried making content that wasn't just explicitly history, and it did really well. And that's when I renamed Step Back History to just Step Back, because I'm like, okay, I guess I can just do what I want on this channel that people don't care much about. And then I think I was also like, formerly, now Dacia, but used to be D-Quack, and before that was Comrade Jeb, who's like a regular who's been a regular on this channel for years now. Said like, oh yeah, I actually like when Tristan talks about, like, I was just like kind of a fly on the wall. I wasn't involved in this conversation. It was on Discord, but I was just like, I like when Tristan talks about politics. I actually don't care that much about the history. And I'm like, okay.
Damn.
I guess I can branch out a bit.
Well, that's why we do what we do, right? We do politics, and we sprinkle in history. We trick you into learning history because whenever I make like pure history videos, people don't like it. Yeah. We need to trick our audiences to going to school.
Yeah. Were all the burger flippers young, or were there like 37-year-olds supporting families there as well? This what's it called? There were not that many people who were like that because this was like 2004. It was before the big economic crash and stuff. They or she, not he. Did I misgender somebody? I don't know. I don't know what the name is in reference to. Anyways.
I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. All right. It's time for a Dutch question. It has nothing to do with the Netherlands. It's just from a Dutch person. So what's the deal with Thanksgiving? As a filthy European, I'm obviously not familiar with the tradition, but doesn't it have some iffy roots and connotations? Should the tradition be changed to be more inclusive of North American indigenous people, or should it be removed entirely? So, in America, yeah. What's it called? American Thanksgiving is very much... So the story of Thanksgiving in America, very briefly. Comrade Dazia is non-binary. Oh, okay. Sorry. My bad. Okay. My bad. Sorry about that. Okay. So in America... Sorry?
Did we mention Comrade Dacia? When did we mention Cameron Dacia?
That was the person I was talking about who was a regular in the Discord for
Oh,
years and
oh yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Okay.
This is yeah. That's just me not paying attention. I'm sorry about that. Um, okay. So on the Thanksgiving question, the reason why Thanksgiving in America is supposed to represent when indigenous people helped the Europeans survive the winter because they were stupid and did not know how to farm things in America, and they did a feast as a way to say thank you before killing them. And yeah, definitely has some super fucked up connotations about indigenous American relations that could definitely do some addressing. And there have been talks to kind of turn Thanksgiving into more of like a sort of in the same way that Columbus Day has been turned into Indigenous Peoples Day, something sort of like a day of mourning rather than a day of like whatever.
Mm.
In Canada, Thanksgiving has changed meanings multiple times over its history, but today is considered just a generic harvest day. Like it's a harvest festival. Like it doesn't have the same connection to the American Thanksgiving. They're on different days and they're for different reasons.
Mm.
Um,
That's fair. I'm any Thanksgiving, so I'm happy. We don't do that.
yeah, it's like yeah, because like for example, there was a time where Thanksgiving was in April in Canada because it was made to celebrate the anniversary of the recovery of the Prince of Wales, who would become later King Edward VII from a serious illness. I told you we're simps for the monarchy. But now, yeah, now it's in October because and it's just I think it's been in October since after World War One. Because and now it's like been it used to be on Armistice Day or Remembrance Day in Canada now, which is November 11th, which to symbolize the end of World War One. But then they made that Remembrance Day, and then they moved Thanksgiving to October, and now it's just a generic harvest festival. So Canadian Thanksgiving has no real meaning, is the answer there.
Less.
um, hopefully that makes things make sense.
I think so. You're
Uh,
the Thanksgiving expert here, among the two of us.
yeah, Canadian Thanksgiving is it's very much like it's. I think it's very much a Canada trying to try to me too, me too, me too to the American Thanksgiving and wanting like we want one too. Because the other thing too is that on Canadian Thanksgiving we just do the same thing Americans do, where we eat turkey and get together. Americans do make a very big deal about Thanksgiving, where Canadians don't as much. So it's a less important holiday here, but yeah, it still is a thing. But like we don't have the same like kind of like pilgrims and indigenous people narrative that shows up in American Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It's just the turkey. What was the role Western Europeans should take in regarding to decolonization and land back besides shutting the fuck up and listening to the voices of oppressed people? Well, I mean, the first one's pretty good.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground. If we can reach step one, we've done most of the work already.
Yeah, I don't know if you've learned. I don't know if this has become apparent, but white people in general are biologically incapable of shutting the fuck up. It's a thing that needs to be addressed. But yeah,
Yeah. I think I honestly don't really know actually, because like I feel like I honestly think that like the Scandinavian perspective is different from a lot of Western European perspectives. Because our history with colonialism is, as I mentioned previous times, it's like with the Sami more like acutely. Um, like we had colonies around the world, but like none of them have um, like the sort of Scandinavian influence over those colonies is non-existent, except for Denmark and Greenland. and that is a whole thing that I have no idea of how that works. But it's also not the same type of like colonialism as like the rush to the New World was. Um, so in Sweden, for example, the context that I have for land back in a European context has to do with like giving, indigenous people rights within the country, which I don't think is as much of a discussion in a lot of Western European countries, like the French or like the Belgians, because like the having an indigenous population, it's not the same. It's not as relevant in the same way as it is in like in either like the New World, or like the Americas, or in northern Scandinavia, where there still is, I think.
Yeah. If I were to give any advice for what, like, the whites should be doing, I guess this is Western Europeans, so I don't know what specifically people in like the Benelux countries or France or the UK or Spain or Portugal should be doing.
Mm.
If anything, it'd be like if there's something I could think of, the biggest thing would be maybe giving them back their artifacts from all the museums that you've stolen.
Yeah, for sure.
I
And
am
like not expecting like reparations for becoming independent.
Yeah.
France and also many other countries.
Yeah, there's also like 10% of Spain's gold reserves were taken from the Aztec treasury. Could give some of that back. See, this is the whole part where you kind of get into like, how Europe underdeveloped Africa, and also like same with the Americas. Like there's a big thing to do with the fact that like these countries did make a fuck ton of money, and the whole reason why they're as rich as they are is because of the wealth that they stole from indigenous people. And yeah, if land, and the thing is like you like Western Europeans should just be glad that they're like Mexicans aren't asking for the American or for the Spanish gold reserve back. The only thing they've asked for, as far as I can tell, is they want King Moctezuma's freaking headdress back, which I think is very interesting. I was in the Mexican Anthropology Museum, and they have this this big feather headdress that on display, and they're like, this is a replica of the headdress of King Moctezuma II, who was the Aztec king. Why? Because the real one is in Spain, and we have asked for them to give it back, and they have not.
They won't. We have to wrap up the stream because I have dinner.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's 2:00. I didn't even notice. Holy moly. Okay, well, we'll come back with these. We got so much more to go on. I completely lost track. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
So I guess before we go, though, you should tell everybody where they can find Mia content.
You can find Mia content on youtube.com/c/Mia Mulder, and you can find my YouTube videos. They're fun. You can find my tweets on twitter.com/potatopolitics. I live stream on twitch.tv/Mia Mulder, and you can listen to the podcast that I do with my close friend called Leechfest. It's a medical history podcast. So that's good if you like medical history. We just made a spooky episode, which is where I talk about body snatching, and we read some creepypastas from the internet because it's Halloween. Well, it used to be Halloween, but now I guess it's November. But you should still listen to it.
Yeah. And we're gonna go raid Lumiru, and I'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
All right.